Hi guys, Chris from Microsoft. I want to talk today a little bit about a new way of using Windows Server 2012. I'm going to be talking about the various user interface options that we have on the new server. What we're mostly going to be covering is the differences between Server Core, MinShell, or Graphical Management Tools and Infrastructure, as it's officially called. It's just easier to say MinShell for me, and server with a GUI. And then finally there's also the desktop user experience, or just the desktop experience as it's commonly referred to. I want to talk about the differences between all of those, and most excitingly talk about the fact that you can now change between those. In the past there was a little bit of a low acceptance rate to people who were looking at Server Core because there were a few limitations to what, well, let's not say a few. There were a lot of limitations to, by design, what you could do in the interface. And there was also the simple problem that you had the decision on day one to either go Server Core or to go server with a GUI, and if you needed to change, there wasn't a lot of options for you. So the way we change between these on Windows Server 2012 is we use Server Manager. We're going to kick off a wizard called Remove Roles and Features. Now it's worth noting that in Server 2008 R2 you are probably familiar with the Add Remove Roles Roles wizard and the Add Remove Features wizard, which has now been replaced by the Add Roles and Features wizard and the Remove Roles and Features wizard. First time you do this, it might throw you a little bit. Not to worry, when you kick off the wizard, they both have links back to the other wizard. So if you go into Remove Roles and Features and notice that the link for Start the Add Roles and Features wizard is listed on the first page. Anyway, we're going to click Next, and you're going to see we are making sure we're connecting to the local server. And another one of these videos we'll talk about remote server management. Today we're just going to do this on the local box. So this is a feature, so we're going to skip past the roles page, and we're going to scroll down through to the user interfaces and infrastructure. As you can see, I do not have the desktop experience. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. What I do have is graphical management tools and infrastructure and the server graphical shell. I can uncheck the server graphical shell, which would bring me back to MinShell, and I can uncheck graphical management tools and infrastructure, which would take us to Server Core. So the first step we're going to do is go into server graphical shell. So by unchecking this and clicking Next, we will need to say restart the destination server automatically if required, because it is not possible to change between the various GUIs, graphical user interfaces, without a reboot. Although that would be spectacularly cool if we could, this is not possible right now. So I'm going to enable automatic restarts. I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say remove. It's going to go through the process of actually pulling off the graphical, or pulling off the head, as it's often called. We're going to pop the head off the server in this case. So this takes just a few minutes, so I'm going to let that process run, and I'll speed up the video and come back to it when it's ready. If you haven't done one of these before, it occasionally has a tendency to go ahead and get about, say halfway through the wizard, the little status bar, and then suddenly jump into the end of it, and it looks like it's hung for a little while on some servers, depending on various things such as hard disk speed, and so don't expect that it's actually hung here at the middle. If it seems to be sitting there for a while, give it a few minutes, it'll pull that off and it'll reboot. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and we'll come back as soon as that's finished. So it suddenly jumped across the status bar. I think I had it paused for maybe 2 minutes. Now we're beginning the reboot process. And I will do a speed up of the recording. Okay, we are rebooting now. You can see in the capture window from behind me that this is a virtual machine. Okay. after it comes up the first time, it has a few extra steps to do, pulling some of those binaries off of the system and doing the way Windows looks and feels. Explorer.exe and Internet Explorer are no longer really a part of this anymore. Why is that important? Well, it's one of the main reasons people want to run headless servers, not so much from a security perspective, but from a security updates perspective. Whenever you have to have a Windows update run, which hopefully you're doing monthly, you're going to get critical updates and important updates and a handful of other things that come through. And Explorer and the overall shell for Explorer, and most importantly Internet Explorer, which you probably don't use very often on your servers, has to get patched. But if they're not there, they do not have to get patched. So we'll probably note that this process will take a few minutes to get through. So while we're waiting for the little spinning circle to do its thing, we'll talk about a couple of other interesting scenarios here. So now that this is dynamic, what you can do is you can start with the graphical user interface turned on. In other words, we've got the full desktop server with a GUI. You could install your roles, you could install your features, get it set up, and then pull this off. And then later, if you need to do any troubleshooting, you can always come back and you can remove those. So I'm going to do a Control-Alt-Delete, and I'm going to log on here. This is my favorite race car driver, Kyle Busch. He is a common character in a lot of my videos and a lot of the labs that I do. So go ahead and get Kyle logged on here. So you can see that we have a typical server core beginning to this. We have the command prompt that loads up, and really nothing else until Server Manager launches. This is new. This is why MinShell is what MinShell is. It gives you the capability to run extra tools. So let me close that off and just take a look for starters at the command prompt, so we can get an overall perspective. So you can see there's no desktop here. There is no start menu. There is no, oh, go away, you Server Manager. There are no icons because there isn't actually a desktop. Well, theoretically, there's a desktop for all intents and purposes, but it does not actually display Explorer. explorer.exe, not a, it ain't there. Explorer exe, it's just not there. So this command prompt is about all you got. Now if I can close that, now I got nothing. You can see absolutely nothing's going. You would think you could right click and say bring me back my command prompt. What do I do? I don't know. Now what you could do is come in here and Control-Delete, get your task manager back up. Recenter the screen here a little bit. Come in here. Go File and Run, a new task. We go CMD, enter, and there we go. Now we got our command prompt back. So one important thing that you can do in MinShell is MMC. So if I fire off the MMC, you can see I can go in here and add remove snap-ins. If I made this guy out to be a, what do we got in here that we could use as a, well, let's just say we're troubleshooting a problem. We might need the services MMC. We could maybe snap perfmon in here for troubleshooting a problem. So you've got a full, let's go to full screen here. You have a full perfmon. All your services listed here, great for troubleshooting. And still, none of the overhead of the no, we do not. None of the overhead of the actual desktop, right? So, Server Manager.exe is also available in this mode. Server Manager, if you haven't played with this, I'll be doing a little extra couple of videos on Server Manager for local and remote server management, but not today. You can see I've got my add remove feature wizards. Oh yes, he's so proud. Feature removal. I'm going to go ahead and hit close. Whenever you see these wizards kick up, they are still running. Clicking close, you can still see the status right here under the little white flag. Here's an important piece, tools, which is also accessible, by the way, by going to all servers and right-clicking on the server that you're currently managing, whether that be local or remote, and you'll see several different components, pieces that are important to that server. But the tools is a great way where you can kick off a lot of the things that you normally work with. So if this is an Active Directory domain controller, any of the remote server administration tools that are installed on this box or any of the server management tools that are on here would be listed under the tools menu. I could launch Active Directory users and computers, or better, Active Directory Administrative Center, right from the screen here without actually having to have a desktop to do so. And there you go. And go ahead and close this off. So what you might want to do in a troubleshooting standpoint is fire off Server Manager and put the GUI back on. That could be accomplished. Oh, shush. He's busy thinking, and I'm disturbing his thinking process. Alrighty. Role-based and feature-based install, DC2. And we come over here to the features, and we scroll down to PowerShell. How about the user interfaces? Might be a little bit more useful there, Chris. Clicking Server Graphical Shell will put the server with the GUI back on. But no, we're going to go for broke here. We weren't happy enough with that. We want to go to Server Core for the ultimate in not having it on your server. Let's come down here again to the user interfaces and infrastructure, and I uncheck graphical management tools and infrastructure. As you can see, it's going to pop up and tell me, hey, I got to get rid of ISE. Now, ISE is not compatible with the server core, so it has to be murdered, it has to be removed, it's got to go away. So once that's unchecked, I click next. I say restart when you're done. I say, yeah, I'm really sure. I say remove, and it begins the process. Incidentally, Server Manager is decoupled from the service management infrastructure. This has actually initiated a PowerShell command in the background. It is not necessary to sit here and watch this. You can click close, and if you want to come back and see what has happened, come over here and see that you can go along with your day. Now, I've told this thing to reboot when it's done, so it will be doing that very soon here. It's pulling off the last couple of bits and pieces. This doesn't take nearly as long as the removal of the desktop and all of that overhead. So what we're seeing now is, it's taking away Server Manager, and it's taking away the MMCs, and it's really stripping it down to Server Core. So you may also notice something kind of interesting, and we're not going to get into features on demand today. However, one thing that features on demand does have an interesting bullet point in this subject, as we're watching the little green line move across the screen. One thing that's kind of interesting about features on demand is that installable packets do actually have the capability of being removed from your server to reduce the footprint, and a lot of that's already been done if you, when installing Windows and are given the choice to what you want to do. If you select, I just want to start with Server Core, you'll have a lot of that thinned out, and you can further thin that out using the uninstall -Windows feature PowerShell commandlet with the -remove at the end, and that will completely uninstall the component and its associated binaries. You can actually get Server Core on Windows Server 2012 RTM down to about 3.5 gigs by ripping out all of the component associated packages that are required to put these roles and features back onto the system. So if you know exactly what that server is going to be doing for the rest of its life, and you're never going to need to add anything else to it, then that could be a way to thin out, especially virtual machines. So this is it's continuing through this process, and I'm going to let it here in a moment. After it does its automatic reboot, I will unpause the video and we'll log on and look at the difference between server with a GUI, server, MinShell, and then finally Server Core. And then we'll go back I'll show you how to do that as well. Alright, so there we go. We have rebooted. We are at server core. So I'm going to Control-Alt-Delete and log this guy in. And so I think it probably took about 3 or 4 minutes. I was thinking it was only a couple of minutes, but it's actually taken just a teeny bit longer than the first one. Alright, so similar to before, we're going to log in with our Control-Alt-Delete, and when we get to the desktop here in a minute, we're going to have a command prompt, but no server manager this time. And so we'll kind of talk about the differences between the things you get and what you don't get. For instance, server manager .exe is not there. iExplore.exe not there. Go into Explorer.exe, it's not there. We have no taskbar. We have no desktop shell. We don't have the Explorer.exe framework around this thing, and we're just kind of sitting at a headless server. MMC, no worky. We cannot go and snap in any of our favorite tools, but here is some magic. PowerShell does work. So let's say that we had actually a problem and we were troubleshooting this now, and maybe you're one of those folks like me, you're not too terribly good at troubleshooting from the command line to get into the event viewer and view problems that are happening. We need to put a shell back on, and so in order to do that, we can actually use PowerShell to go and add those back in. Alright, so we need to get back. We need to get a GUI, or at least something where we can get some troubleshooting tools. Maybe you don't want to go all the way back to server with a GUI, but there's the MinShell in the middle where you can get all your MMCs, which will show you the event viewer and give you all sorts of different things like performance monitor to to get through, and maybe you're be able to look through some disk management stuff. So anyway, what we got to do is we're going to use a dism command that would allow you to put this back on. There are dism commands that are built into PowerShell. You've got install -Windows feature and remove -Windows feature, and we have the capability. Sorry, video flaked out on me for a second. So we're going to do the dism commandlet for install -Windows feature, tab to complete. Now this one is called server GUI mgmt infra. So if you can remember, server management, GUI management, server infrastructure, whatever that stands for, that's great. I have a tendency not to be able to do that, so I'll show you another quick little command that you can use in PowerShell. Get -Windows feature, and it'll just go and compile a list of all of the Windows roles and features and throw these out here. If you go up just a little bit, you'll see user interfaces and infrastructure right here. Oops. And out to the side you can see user interfaces infra, server GUI management infra, desktop-experience server GUI shell. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter, and now this is going to begin installing our not full graphical shell, but at least get us back to where we were before so that we can actually start doing a little troubleshooting on this broken server. So the differences. Let me just really quickly kind of highlight the 4 different modes. We have server core, which pretty much all you get, command prompt, PowerShell. By adding MinShell, you're going to get server manager as well, and then most of your MMCs, and a lot of the control panel applets as well, like time, for instance, is going to actually bring up the standard time console. It's just that the full Explorer shell is not going to be running. most everybody is familiar with all the stuff you get with Server with a GUI. Most of it's running with that for some time now. So you get things like Explorer and Taskbar, Notification Area, Internet Explorer, and for those people who have needed it one time or another, possibly for RDS, remote desktop services type implementations, or possibly doing some sort of a media server, any kind of need to use the Windows Media Player or that foundation, you need to go with the desktop experience, and that will put all the extra stuff in. One other thing that it will do when you put the GUI back on a server and then put desktop experience on it, it's going to give you the store. So much like the experience that you get in Windows 8, the store gives you the capability to go and download apps. Although you cannot have a connected account, you can still type in your Windows, your Microsoft account ID, what used to be termed as the Windows Live ID, and then you can pull down things. For instance, there is a pretty neat remote desktop connection manager replacement that is full screen mode. So that's something that might be of use for pulling down. So it's going to take a little bit for it to run, so I want to go ahead and pause the video for a minute. I'll come back and we'll just take a look at it. We've already seen it, so it's a pretty quick story, and then we'll wrap up the video. Yeah, oops, okay, so you must restart the server. I forgot to put a -restart at the end of that previous command there, so typically you would make it look like this. Now we've already done that, so obviously no reason to do that, so Control Home. And so what we'll just do is shut down, and then we're going to do a restart, and then we're going to do a force, and we're going to do time equals 0. And so that should give us a nice quick restart. Now, this restart has a tendency to take a little bit longer than your average post install of a feature or a role. So I'm going to pause the video again, and then we'll come up into MinShell and take another quick look at it. And here we are. Okay, so that actually only took about 2 minutes. I think I'm getting some strange SSD reliability stuff going on here. I'll have to go and make sure that I don't have a lot of background I/O running for something else at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and log back in, show we've got MinShell back up here. Incidentally, this has all been running Hyper-V on Windows 8 client. I'll have a video coming up not too long where we discuss some of the differences between server and client. Alright, and there we go. As you can see, we are back to where we can access Server Manager, MMCs, other things such as portions of the control panel. So, for instance, if I needed to get back into the event viewer to see what maybe is wrong with this server, this would be the way to do that. Anyway, this has been Chris from Microsoft. I need to say that this is not an official Microsoft presentation by my company, but rather a personal project, and any opinions expressed are solely my own, and also that this is not an official plan of record. If you found this video useful, please give it a like. Also, if would care to visit my blog is at 9z.com, so feel free to drop by. Real easy to remember, last number and the last letter of the alphabet, .com, and those will have links to my Facebook and Twitter and YouTube accounts, as well as some personal information about me there. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.